Yo, what's up guys? My name is JT and we're going to build that gorgeous model you just saw at the beginning of this video right here on Model Railroad in the Southwest. So that model is an HO scale Walthers ready mix plant, and the reason I'm building that is because my grandpa used to own a trucking company with several trucks and dump trucks, and he used to deliver sand and gravel products across New Mexico. He sold that off, and then my grandpa's brother, my great uncle, he used to work for a cement company called Waycor in Albuquerque. So it just kind of just wraps around all together because I really want to put some semi trucks there that run sand and gravel and also have the ready mix plant, just kind of like sort of like a tribute to my grandpa and my uncle and his brothers, the rest of my uncles. And I thought it'd just be kind of a cool, a little scene on the layout. I'll show you guys where that's going to be later on in a few videos from now. So this video is going to be a little lengthy. I'm going to show you exactly how to build it, exactly what to use to build it, and how to weather it. And I'm going to show you exactly how I weather this model in its entirety. So stick around for the rest of the video and check it out. So here are all the items that I plan on using for the concrete plant on the layout. Now all this stuff can be found at trainworld.com. I'm not sponsored by them. I just want you to know where I got this stuff in case you want one of these items for your layout. Now the first thing I want to show is this Walthers Cornerstone Blue Star Ready Mix kit. Now this thing has a ton of detail and it looks like it has a great potential to be weathered very nicely. Now the next thing is this front end loader, and that is from Atlas, and it has a ton of detail, as well as I would like to weather all these vehicles and make them look like they're covered in concrete dust. Now the next thing I like to show is this Woodland Scenics Just Plug lights and hub set along with this expansion hub. Now I'm going to use these together in order to light up this kit. Now here are some additional LED stick-on lights just in case I want to add more to the kit. Now I have these jersey barriers and these parking bumpers to add detail to the scene. I have these railroad yard crew figures, and I know they're not construction figures or anything like that, but I didn't find anything that that I liked to use on this scene here. I especially like this guy because he looks like he's climbing a ladder. Now also I've added 2 concrete mixers, and those are right here along with this dump truck. Alright, so let's get all this stuff and get started. Alright, so before we get started, I want to show you guys the tools that I'm going to use to build this model. First off are these 321 blocks. These are very heavy pieces of metal that are perfectly square, so you can use them to hold stuff together while they're drying. Also, since they're square, like I said, you're going to have perfectly straight walls or square walls. Next off are these sprue nippers. Very nice to have. You can remove parts off of sprues very quickly and very nicely. Also a X-Acto knife that does the same thing, but it's nice to use to trim those pieces when you're done. Next off is a small ruler that'll come in handy later on, and I'll show you why. A couple of pliers. These are nice to have because you can push them down and they'll hold apart whatever you're trying to glue. Also a pencil. You can mark stuff with it if you need to, like I'll show you later in the video, and also a piece of a nail file, and I'll show you why you'll need those later. Next off is this Plystrike plastic weld. It is a great solvent that glues your pieces of plastic very quickly and it holds them very nicely. Next off is some super glue, and that sort of does the same thing, but these are for areas that you really can't quite use a plastic weld, and I'll show you that later in the video as well. So I'm going to be painting this model with this Rust-Oleum chalked paint, and this is called Chiffon Cream, and also this one here as well is a Rust-Oleum, and this is an ultra matte paint as well, and it is called Coastal Sage. So let's get started on this model and see how it goes. So first, this is the box, and inside you'll find a bunch of pieces on the sprues. Next you'll find the instruction manual and also some decals for the kit itself. Then you'll find some acetate for the windows that go inside the building. Next, what I'm going to do is remove all the parts and pieces off with the sprue nippers. I cannot tell you how easy it is to remove these parts with the sprue nippers. It makes a fast and easy work. Next, what I'm going to use is a nail file to remove all the imperfections off the plastic, because when you remove the parts and pieces off the sprues, you'll find a bunch of little burrs and little parts and pieces sticking off from the plastic. Then I'm going to start by gluing these parts together with the plastic weld. And that plastic weld is very nice. It makes for quick and easy work because all you got to do is drag a little bit of that solvent across the plastic and it's pretty much ready to go. It takes seconds for the plastic to get hard enough for you to handle other parts and pieces. So normally I'll use quite a bit of the plastic solvent, and I probably don't have to use as much as I do, although I just really want to make sure that it gets in the cracks and crevices and gets this actual building to weld together and make sure that it's solid and able to be handled once it's all done. So one thing that I wanted to mention about this project is that I normally don't put the entire structure together and then paint it. This one's a different scenario because I figured since the entire structure is going to be one color in my case, I just figured I'd put it together and then paint it. You can do yours differently. You can paint yours individual colors if you want. It's just mine. I wanted it to be all one color. The only thing that I really didn't paint right away is the office building, and that's because I wanted to paint the interior walls black so that the light from the LED that I'm going to install later in the video won't show through the walls. So that's why the office building was painted separately and in different pieces. So now that I'm securing the roof to the top of this part of the structure, I'm going to go ahead and grab those 1, 2, 3 blocks in order to secure the sides of the walls to the building, because I noticed that there was like little cracks and crevices. So after I glue it together, I'm going to go ahead and put those 1, 2, 3 blocks next to it and keep it situated while it continues to dry. Next, I'm going to go ahead and start gluing together the collectors. That's what they're called in the Walthers instruction manual. These are a little tedious to put together just because of how small they are, but once you put the first one together, they go along pretty smoothly. They're also a little difficult to put together because it doesn't really specify how they go together in the instruction manual, but if you pay attention to the parts and pieces, you can see that there's little tabs and such, and once you get that together, you'll notice what goes where, and they go together pretty quickly. Now I'm going to start off by putting them on the actual roof, and one thing you have to pay attention to on the instruction manual is that there are little tiny holes at the bottom of one of the walls on the collectors. Those go toward the inner part of the actual roof on the structure, and that is because there are little pipes that actually go into those holes when you're actually putting the pipes onto the building later on. So I'm going to go ahead and start by applying the walls to the foundation. Now what you see here is I'm using the 1, 2, 3 blocks to keep the foundation in place on the workspace because it kind of just moves around and it's a little difficult to keep it, secured and, solid so that you can apply the walls. So one thing that I found difficult about this part of the model is that it doesn't really show you where to put the walls in reference to the foundation. There's no tabs, there's nothing. So I had to use the actual supports that I'm applying right now and in reference to the foundation to see where the wall goes, because you really don't want to mess that up or else the entire structure just won't fit together and it'll be a little off. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm going to go ahead and glue these together and then we'll work on the next area. So I'm going to start off by test fitting the roof to the structure to make sure that it's true and square. Then I'm going to use the 1, 2, 3 blocks to make sure that it's square while I'm gluing it down. So one thing that I'm going to put in next are the supports that go in the interior walls of the structure. These are a little kind of finicky to put in. They are kind of retained by the I-beams inside the structure on the supports. So you kind of got to put them in, and they're under a little bit of tension, so you kind of use a X-Acto knife to get them to fit into the I-beams. Then I'm going to put in the floor, or the kind of the inner roof for the structure, and then I'm going to start putting together the walls to create the rest of the structure. So if you're noticing on my cutting mat, you'll notice there's a bunch of grids missing and it looks like it's been wiped off. Well, that was a huge accident that I was incredibly upset about that happened last year. I was gluing together a wall and I accidentally knocked over that solvent, and instead of just letting it dry, which I normally do, I panicked because my iPad was next to it and some other stuff, and I ended up just wiping away the entire grid, and I was pretty upset about it. So I ended up replacing it with a different one, and now that when I work on structures that need to be glued, I just pull out this one and work on that one so I don't ruin my nicer cutting mats. This smaller outer wall that I'm installing right now was a little difficult to fit in because there's a small tab and a small notch that you have to kind of force down into the structure, and I was afraid that I was going to smash the structure itself, but once you get that to fit in, it fits in quite nicely. So I kind of took the liberty of installing the top part of the structure onto the building, and just because it was a little difficult to install it. So I'm going to go ahead and start to put together these pipes. One thing that's a little difficult to put together is that little Y there that I'm gluing these 3 pipes to. Make sure that you have them in the correct orientation or else they just won't fit on the actual model. So I'm going to go ahead and put it onto the roof, and 2 of those pipes fit into those holes on the roof. And on the roof you'll see that there are a bunch of little pipes that go into those collectors. I forgot to film that, I'm sorry, but you can actually see that those pipes go into the collectors themselves. Next, I'm going to start attaching the long pipes that go from the bottom of the structure at the foundation up to the top of the roof that go into that small collector that you can see there. These aren't so hard to put in. You just got to make sure that they're square and straight and that they go into the proper hole on the collector. What I did to make this a little easier is that I started at the bottom. So I glued each individual pipe at the bottom of the foundation. There's a small little area down there where the actual pipes go into, so it makes it easier to glue in. Then I glue it at the middle part of the structure where there's a small bracket, and then I finish gluing up the top ones at the top near the collector at the edge of the roof. So Walthers refers to this as the conveyor top section in the instruction manual. I'm not familiar with ready-mix plants or concrete facilities, so I don't know what this actual part is called. I know that there's a small motor that goes at the top that probably helps bring up dirt and whatever is in the collection bin at the bottom. But this is not so bad putting together, even though they're really small pieces, because there's nice tabs and it just kind of fits together, and it goes really quickly with that solvent. So once you get this together, you can go ahead and start by putting on this little motor here, and that one's pretty easy to install too. There's a little platform that goes attached as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start by applying the handrails to the platform. Now I really want to stress to be careful when you're removing these from the sprue. Do not use the sprue nippers for these because you will damage them. Because I damaged one of them too. I forgot to use the X-Acto knife to remove them from the sprue, but that is the best way to remove them, is using that knife, because you will do the most minimal damage with it. So I'm going to start putting together the conveyor. That's what it's referred to in the Walthers manual. So I'm going to use these 1, 2, 3 blocks in order to help me keep them together while I'm gluing them and keep them true and square. So if you don't have a set of these 1, 2, 3 blocks, I highly recommend you picking some up. You can get them on Amazon for about 20 bucks or so, or from Micromark. I don't know what they cost on Micromark, but it's not really a bad deal for 20 bucks on Amazon. So these walls are slightly difficult to install, but once you got the first two sides on, you'll put them together very quickly. So even though that I have put glue in the inside, I really want to make sure that this thing is not going to fall apart. So I put a little bit of glue on the outer edges, and I saw a few pieces of the walls that are kind of uplifted a little bit. That's why I applied a little bit more glue. So I'm going to go ahead and start by attaching the platform to the conveyor with the solvent, and it goes on very quickly and very nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and attach the conveyor to the foundation. Down there is a small pad where you can secure this to, and it just fits right over it, and then you can glue it together. Now I would recommend using the 1, 2, 3 blocks or something that's sort of like that in order to make sure that it's square against the building. Now I'm going to start working on the bin that goes here at the bottom, and that one goes together just like a couple of 4 walls, and it's pretty much done very quickly. So I'm going to start putting the silo together, and the cylindrical parts just go right on top of each other. I'm going to put together the cross bracing that the silo fits on top of. Now, these walls slide directly into the cross bracing, and it's really easy to put together. You really can't mess it up. Now, to make sure that each wall of the cross bracing is true and square, I'm going to use those 1, 2, 3 blocks to hold it together while it finishes up gluing. Then I'll go ahead and put the silo on top of it, and then I'll go ahead and install the other parts for it. Now, before you decide to install the silo onto the foundation of the structure, I highly recommend installing this pipe here, and that goes from the bottom of the silo into the side wall of the structure. So I'm going to go ahead and glue the basement walls to the foundation. These are what they refer to in the instruction manual. And these ones go together pretty easily because there are little tabs there at the bottom on the foundation. So after I finish installing the basement walls, I'm going to install the floor for the office building. Now don't make the same mistake I did and install it incorrectly. There is an arrow that points towards the inside of the structure. Put it on that way because the railings and where the doors are supposed to be won't be in the correct orientation. So make sure you do that correctly. So I'm going to start removing the guardrails off the sprue. So be careful when you're removing these from the sprue. Use the X-Acto knife like I told you earlier in the video. That is the best method in order to reduce the risk of damage to the guardrails. I'm going to start by installing the steps and the actual platforms to the guardrails. So I went ahead and painted the entire structure with the spray paint. There are a few imperfections that I'll show you later in the video. What I'm going to do is remove the acetate from the sprue. Now, be careful when you remove these as well. Do not use the sprue nippers, use the X-Acto knife, or else you'll be in a little bit of trouble and you'll crack them and it'll be a mess. What I like to install acetate with is I use Mod Podge. Now you can use the Mod Podge gloss or the Mod Podge matte. It really doesn't make too much of a difference because you're just going to put little dots and install the glass. So next what I'm going to install is an LED. What I'm putting there is a small piece of styrene tubing, and I'm going to use it as sort of like a conduit to disguise the wire. I don't want the wire showing. So I cut a small piece of styrene that I'm going to run the wires through. So this is what I'm going to use. I'm going to use that Woodland Cynics LED, and I'm going to remove the connector with the sprue nippers, and then I'm going to feed it through that styrene part there. So what I did earlier is that I used the drill to drill a small hole through the foundation for the wire to be fed through. Then I'll go ahead and put that conduit piece in there and glue it down here momentarily. Although I want to tell you guys that I put in the LED on the ceiling about the midpoint of the structure so that it lights up the area pretty evenly. So I'm going to glue in that conduit with some Gorilla Gel glue to the foundation, also to the wall of the structure. So I'm going to drill another hole for the other LED that's going to go inside the office building. I'm going to glue the office building walls to the floor with the same Gorilla Glue. So I'm going to use the Gorilla Glue rather than the solvent-based glue or cement, because if you put that solvent onto the fresh paint, it could run and mess up that paint and it'll look horrible. So here you'll notice that I'm going to put the LED on the roof, and I want to put it midpoint on the roof in order to make sure that it lights up the office building evenly. Earlier in the video I mentioned that I painted the interior walls of the office building black, and that's because I don't want any light showing through the walls of the structure. So here is the almost finished product. Now I really didn't get to film it all that much, and I thought I was going to do it later on. I just forgot and I started weathering it, so this is pretty much it. So here is the grate, and I'm going to go ahead and put that on just for looks right now so I can see how it fits. I'm not going to put anything in it right now because I want to put some products in there, maybe some gravel or some concrete. So let's get some weathering done and let's check it out. So these are the products that I typically like to use when I weather and detail structures and anything like them. So first off is this makeup set. It's actually a makeup brush set that I got from Walmart. It's like 30 bucks. It's kind of nice, you know, it's real plush brushes. These are some paint brushes that are from Walmart and Hobby Lobby, and these are from Hobby Lobby. These are precision paint brushes. I use these for painting on doorknobs and just little streaks and small things. These are Tamiya weathering powders. These are kind of like a actual facial makeup. They're real pasty, and they grab onto models pretty well. They're not messy whatsoever. These are Monroe weathering powders. These are very nice. They have an adhesive agent in them so that they stick onto buildings or whatever you're going to use them for. Here are some Vallejo paints. These are excellent paints. I'm sure there's other paints out there that are just as great, but I like these a lot. I think that the pigment in them is just incredible, and they just work very, very well. I also use these little trays, or these little cups here, dishes, so I could put weathering powders and also some paints in them. So let's get started. So the areas that I really want to put rust on are areas that I kind of made a mistake on when I was painting the building. So right here, I'm not sure what happened here. I don't think I mixed the paint very well in the can, and some of it kind of just clumped up and collected down here. So seeing that there is some pretty good texture right here, I'm going to take advantage of that and make it look like it's the metal, you know, kind of decomposing with all the rust and stuff like that. And also right here, there's an imperfection in the wall right there, and I'm going to use some rust there, and just some like around the piping and some lower areas along this, and maybe on this area right here. I think that'll look pretty neat. And the same thing sort of happened on the back side right here, just above the wall. So I'm going to show you how I do that with the paint. So make sure you really want to mix up your paint very well. So with rust, you typically want to start with the darkest color first. That's because that's the oldest rust, and the newer rust is more of a lighter orange. So I'm going to go ahead and start with that. I'm going to put just a little bit in this little container. So like I mentioned earlier, the area I want to work on is this right here. I'm going to dip just a bit in the paint just like so. And then I'm just going to touch it to the model. Just like so. And you want to let that dry just a bit. Sometimes I will use a hair dryer to increase or to reduce the time that I wait for it to dry. So now that you've had the darkest rust dry up some, you're going to use a similar area of the sponge and pick up the slightly lighter version of the rust. Just like that. Just like that. Then you want to dry that with the air dryer, or go ahead and leave it the way it is and let it air dry itself. So what I forgot to mention earlier, what I typically do is I get a piece of paper towel if I get too much paint on the sponge, and that what I'll do is I'll just kind of like dab it off just a little bit, just like that. That way you're not using too much in the model, and I kind of use just a little too much paint on this portion of the model, but that's fine. It'll be okay because we're going to use some weathering powders to fix that up some. I got just a little bit on here, but that's fine because we could do that too. We could put a little bit of rust on the piping there. And typically with this sort of rust, the light rust, I kind of like to put it in certain areas too, because I think the lighter rust looks really nice as well. And by using a sponge, like I said earlier, it kind of makes it look a little random. So on the top here, I'll do that as well, just a little bit by the coupling. I showed you guys this imperfection of the paint here as well, and I'm going to add just a little bit of the medium colored rust there. And I'll add some of the streaking later when I actually put some of the weathering powders on. I know it looks kind of like in your face, the rust. But once we put the weathering powder in, you'll see that it really comes together. Alright, so some of these areas that I put like the darker rust colors, I'm going to go and I'll go over it with some of the lighter rust. So I'm going to go ahead and dry this off to make sure that it's perfectly dry. So in the areas that I put the darker rust color, I'm going to go over it with the super light rust. And I just want to get just a little bit of the paint off on my paper towel. Just lightly hit it. Alright, I think that's about as much rust as I want to put on this thing. I think it's already a little too much, in my opinion. But I think it's going to look real good once it's all weathered up and made to look real dirty as well. So let's go ahead and start with making the model look just dirty in general. So I'm going to try using a chalky white and the medium gray, and I'm going to mix them together in this bowl here and try to get a kind of like just a dirty gray, grimy color. And then this is the makeup brush set that I mentioned earlier. So it just has a bunch of plush brushes, and I'm going to use probably a medium-sized one. So I'm going to use this brush, and I'm just going to mix it all together. And I'm just going to go on the top and try to hit some areas and just try to get it dirty looking. And I got some color to it. I think I'm going to add just a little bit of black. Grimy black that's what's in this one here. It already had just a little bit from earlier in one of my other projects I had, so. And it might seem a little kind of crazy at first, like, wow, I just put a little too much. Don't freak out, because the more you work it in, you can work it into other areas of the model, and it won't look so dark. I'm not saying to pour a bunch of the powder on top of it, but if you think you put a little too much, don't freak out, because you can still, pick it up and move it to a different portion of the model. So for the treadway up here, the walkway up here, I'm going to use a smaller brush, kind of like this one right here, and then I'm going to get a little bit of the black, just dab it just a little bit, and then I want to walk it down just a little bit, just to show that people walk around these areas. Just want to get this dirty as well, make it look like it's been sitting out in the elements. Now on the side, what I'll do is I'll do streaks downwards. That way it looks like the rainwater has actually brought the dirt down the model, down the side. And there's some areas that I'd like to touch up just a little bit, make it look a little dirty. Just like that, just like this. As you can see, I made it look a little streaky there. Now it looks like there's like specific lines from the brush, so I'm just going to blend it in just a little bit with the gray. So now that I've got it kind of looking a little, grimy and dusty and kind of just dirty in general, I'm going to get a little bit of the dark earth, or this might be medium earth. Yeah, I'm going to use a medium earth and just take a little bit off on some paper towels. Just kind of streak it down in some areas. So I'm going to get a little bit of that medium earth, take some off of my paper towel. What I'm saying by taking off some of the paper towel is I just kind of do this thing, just get most of it off, and then I'm going to hit the top areas. Now, I'm going to show you how to do the rust. And I'm going to show you the overall finished product of the building. I just want to show you how to do the rust so I can get the rest of it done and show you what it looks like. And I'm going to use just a little bit of the dirty yellow, dark rust, and light rust, and a little bit of that medium earth that I had earlier. So what I've done is I've opened up the packaging and I've poured just a little bit of the weathering powders out in the lids. And I'm going to use several of these different brushes. But first what I'm going to use is this small brush here. It's kind of pinpoint. And I'm just going to get the model. And like I did before, I'm going to start with the darkest color first. And I'm going to apply that to the rust. I'm just going to get just a little bit. You really don't need too much because it has a ton of pigment and it's going to look really good. So you're just going to want to dust it on just a little bit here. Just like that, if you can see that. Now, a little bit of the excess, you don't want to get it too much on the model, so you want to just blow it off. You could just blow it off with your mouth. I'm just going to add just a little bit more. Then I'm going to go with a little bit of the light rust. Touch it on top. You want to streak it down just a bit, because that's what rust does. It streaks down the side of buildings or whatever you're weathering. See, it's already starting to come together and it looks really good. So I'm going to clean off my brush and I'm going to use that paper towel. And I'm going to get a little bit of that dirty yellow. Just streak it down just a bit. Really starting to look good. Now, what I want to do is to bring it together. Is I'm going to use a little bit of that light rust. Actually, not the light rust. I'm going to use the medium earth and load one of the brushes just a bit and bring it down. I kind of want to use a different brush, kind of like this, a round brush, as you can see. And I'm just going to work it in just a little bit, because it seems like there's a harsh line on top of that one there. Just to bring it down. And I think that looks really good. You can see the streaking there, and it looks pretty decent in my opinion. And I'm going to use this angled brush, and I'm going to put just a little bit more of that light rust, and I'm going to pull it and streak it down. And I'm going to go over it just a little bit more. This kind of takes a little bit of time and a little bit of work, so you just want to kind of do layers and see what looks good to your eye. And use this round brush to blend it all in just a bit. And there we go. So this part is going to be a little more involved than this, just because it's a bigger area. And I'm just going to add layer by layer. Alrighty guys, so here's the final product, and I think it came out very good. Originally, I did not intend on this structure being so filthy. The reason being is because I wanted it to look like a newer structure on the layout, although every other building on my layout seems very clean, and that is because in the desert, buildings really just don't get dirty unless they're extremely old, and they don't get too rusty whatsoever either. Although on my way to town today, there's a town about 30 minutes south of where I live, and I was going to the store and I saw a ready-mix plant off to the left, and it's still used today, and it was disgusting in a good way. It was filthy, full of dirt, full of, concrete dust and rust, and I thought maybe mine could look like that because it's still a functional building, although it just looks really dirty. So that is why this one looks so filthy, and I really like the way it came out. I think it looks really realistic. One thing I'd like to point out is the rust down here on the camera and up here, it's not as in your face in person as it is on the camera. On the camera, it just looks kind of a little outrageous, and there's a lot of harsh lines on the camera. Like over here, there's some harsh lines. It is not like that in person, trust me. It looks really good and realistic. So let me turn this just a bit so you can take a look at it. I think the tower came out very good. I really like the way this rust came out. I think it looks, like I say, realistic. And if you turn it down this way some, this just looks incredible. I think that where the lines are here and the dirt comes down from them, and a little bit of light rust, I think it just came out very good. And also you'll notice down at the bottom near the platform or the foundation, you'll see some dirt and some of the the rust coming down and pulling down there next to the concrete. Now some of this is going to be covered up by dirt and concrete dust, and I think it's really going to bring it all together when it's done. Now on the back, it's a little more weathered than the front, as you'll see. Over here, I put a little bit of dirt here, just from a little bit of from the overhang of the roof, and I did some rust right there, and I brought it down just right here, just to make the effect of when it rains, it brings some of the rust down, and it kind of stained the paint a little bit. Now you'll notice up here, I did some rust on some of these right here as well. Now I think that this rust came out really good right here. I think it looks really good. Now I didn't bring the rust into the I-beam here, and just the same as the front, and the only reason is because that's a really thick piece of metal. This is all like corrugated metal. This thing is going to rust way faster than some I-beams here, so I think that really looks realistic, and it's just the rust getting brought down by the rain and stuff, and it's collecting on top of the I-beam. That's why I did it like that. Now you'll see that the platform or the foundation is really dirty, and that is because it's going to be covered by sand and dirt and concrete anyway, so I think that that's going to look good when it's all said and done. Now you'll see on the top of the roof, you really can't hardly see it on the camera, although I did make it really dark and grimy, not necessarily too dark, but I made it a little bit dark and grimy, and I left a little bit of dirt and a little bit of some of that yellow weathering powder just to simulate dirt collecting at the end of the roof. Now I brought a little bit of the grime and dirt down to the bottom here near the skirting of this building. You may be able to kind of see I put some dirt or some grime on the stairs going up in there, and I put a little bit of grime right there at the bottom of the land, near the landing inside the building. And I put a little bit of, dirt down here as well. So overall, I think that this building came out very good. I'm very happy with it. So I'm going to wrap this up at the end of the video and tell you guys a little bit more about the scene and a little bit more about this video. Alrighty guys, I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I did building this model. Now, don't get discouraged while you're building structures. They take time. It took me several hours just to get this model done. I wanted to make sure that it was done right. So it took me several hours over the course of a few days. Now I worked on it before work, after work, while I was watching the kids. I let them do their thing, and while they were napping, I did some stuff as well. Now, like I said, don't get discouraged. It's supposed to be fun to build these models, and it's not supposed to be stressful. Model rail running is for fun, not for stress. So just relax, have fun, and build stuff. Now, this is going to be the beginning of a new video series. Now, I said this a while back about some videos that I was going to do, although that just didn't pan out the way I thought it was going to pan out. So this next video is going to be about how I build the foundation and how I start the scenery, and I'm going to show you guys how I do that through the entire process. So stay around, check out those videos, and I hope you enjoy them. So if you have any questions about this build or anything in the future, go ahead and put it in a comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Also send me an email. My email is in my channel page, so go check that out. So that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Talk to you later. Take care and keep it between the rails.